The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this episode of the ForceCenter podcast feed is one of our deep dives. This is part 2 of a deep dive. We looked at Leia's journey through the original trilogy. Now we're going to look at Leia's journey through the sequel trilogy, and I can't wait. I'm Joseph Scripchall.
I'm Ken Knapsack. This has been a lot of fun, a long time coming discussion, and it gives me opportunity to watch all these movies again. That's always fun.
It is great to have a reason. You know, not that you need a reason to watch Star Wars, but yeah, I was kind of watching a couple moments, and I got running late on the morning of our recording because I got lost and was just watching Star Wars. It's a great thing to be late to talking about Star Wars because I was accidentally watching too much Star Wars.
I did a thing. I was going to do the shuffling through Rise of Skywalker to get to any Leia parts, and I just was like, well, I mean, I can't skip this scene. Well, I mean, come on, frick, I can't skip that. I'll get it. So you just end up watching the whole thing.
Yeah, I need to see the Hacky Hacky dance. Come on, they work so hard. It's rude not to watch it.
I did. You. That's literally the moment I was like, I just love that dance so much. I'm not going to fast forward.
I need to put that on as like a yoga aerobics video and just try to dance with the Hacky Hacky and annoy the hell out of my neighbors. Anyway, we're going to get into this, but first we always want to let you know that our podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week we are recommending Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. Great High Republic book that we will be discussing, I believe, next week. Next Thursday's deep dive, we'll be doing a deep dive into the Dark. So if you want to get caught up, if you like listening to the audiobooks, you can download your free audiobook today. You can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. But that's not all. We have another offer.
We have another offer indeed from Inside Edition, Inside Editions, publishers of a ton of great podcast Star Wars books. We read these ad copies every week, and sometimes you just don't see the words. Inside Editions is offering 35% off across their entire website with a special ForceCenter code. To get your discount, enter the coupon code FC35 or visit the website with this link, insideeditions.com/discount/FC35. This week, we're recommending the Inside Editions book, Star Wars Galactic Baking. This is a new one coming out on May 4th. So check it out with FC35. I was kind of giggling because you said iPhone. I think on Tuesday's show, instead of Kindle, I said Kendall, like Kendall Jenner's going to read you a book. And I was so in my head on that, I forgot the words I was reading here.
I did the merger that should never happen in real life if I merged iPhone and Android and made iPhoid.
iPhoid Mary.
Someday we will live in a monopoly all controlled by iPhoid. A terrifying, terrifying day. I'm sorry that I predicted it with my stumble. But we did it, Ken. We got through it. You can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter or Inside Editions with FC35. Look, we nailed it. So we are going to move on to our actual discussion. Like I said last week, we did a big look at Leia's journey through the original trilogy. I think part of the reason we wanted to do this is we've talked about a lot of individual moments or looked at Leia through a lot of lenses or Leia's relationships or her meaning to fans. But it's really great to just walk through the movies and kind of try to look at her path as a character through the Skywalker Saga specifically, and the movies specifically, because there's so many great books and comics that we could do, hours and hours and hours of this, but really looking at the movies, the Skywalker Saga, and asking, what are her actual actions? When are movies where many events happen to her and she kind of handles them and moves forward versus when is there a movie where she is in stasis, something happens and she truly is changed by the events of the movies, and asking what her motivations are, what are her actual goals, what is Leia herself trying to accomplish, and then does she succeed and does she fail, and how do all those things add up to creating this legendary character of Leia. And last week, by walking through the original trilogy, We really saw that Leia was established as a politician, a spy, a rebel leader, royalty, an action hero in Return of the Jedi was a great phrase you use, Ken. We got to see, of course, that she is a Hutt Slayer, a trauma survivor, a Force-sensitive Skywalker twin, and so much more. She is a really well-rounded, multifaceted woman known for her steadfast strength, cutting wit, and just deep, intuitive, emotional connection to people. Her romantic partner, Han Solo, her brother, Luke Skywalker, and her many friends and fellow freedom fighters like Wicket. We as individuals, and then just as the larger culture, then got to live with all of that, all of the legacy of Leia, that legend that had been established by the original trilogy for many years. And then, Ken, the sequel trilogy comes along, and the sequel trilogy explicitly wrestles with that legacy, what it might mean to a new generation, and still treats Leia as a person who's now in a different part of her life. You know, she's older, and she is now even more things. Now she is a mother, a mentor, a wife, and a Jedi who made the choice to lay down her blade. So I'm really excited to look at how the sequel trilogy takes what existed in the original trilogy, the legend, and build on it. And I want to start the conversation by asking you, Ken, what were your hopes, dreams, fears, expectations for Leia going into the sequel trilogy before you'd seen any of it?
I want to come from I'll say some very real world thing. I must admit, Carrie Fisher's struggles and everything that she was so public with, and she hadn't really been in the public eye in terms of acting for a while now. And I had some, I had some real world thoughts, like what is she going to be capable of? What's she going to bring to this movie? She obviously cares, but what can they really get out of her as a performer? And then later on, we see even she kind of admitted like she had to kind of find her footing again in Force Awakens, and so. I had some of that going in, but in terms of the character, and that influenced what in terms of character. So I guess I had somewhat tempered expectations for this character that I love, and because of that, I just had real hope that she would be the leader of the galaxy in a way. We didn't know the situation. We knew there was this thing called the First Order, and they had TIE fighters and all that kind of stuff. But so going in, I wanted her to be in that spot, in that pole position, so to speak. And in a way she was. There's some different stories and Chancellor Vilchim and all these things that we, learn coming out of Force Awakens, but all through it, she is kind of that symbol of leadership. And I do feel like kind of got that. But then I did have this idea of this fear of after Force Awakens, maybe, that I don't want her to become a forgotten relic. I don't want her to be. Force Awakens had some great Leia stuff, and she was part of what that sequel trilogy of film wanted to accomplish, of the new generation coming up and the importance of passing it on. All those kind of things we talk about a lot, and are going to talk about here today. But I did want more, and I got more. But I wanted, going into 8, I wanted Leia to be in more things, and we did get that.
Yeah, no, you're saying a lot of great things. I think we'll dive into Force Awakens, but I agree with you that there's a lot of what Leia is that was there in the Force Awakens, but then all of these other aspects, both new and old, get added into the mix because the character is so many things. And that really happens, I think, moving into Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, I'm really glad also that you mention the thinking about it from a real world perspective, thinking about Carrie Fisher, because we talked about that a lot when we were talking about the original trilogy, is that Carrie Fisher and Leia are kind of inseparable in lots of ways. A lot of stuff that was on the page for Leia would have been there with any actor, but Carrie Fisher made it come alive. The humor, the depth of soul, that feeling of just kind of incredible wisdom and strength that I think is just a part of who Carrie Fisher was, that was, added to Leia, or if it was, intended on the page, absolutely made real by Carrie Fisher. So they're always going to be tied together. And for me, that was definitely the fear going into it, less about could Carrie Fisher, handle it, because even though that she had been very public with her various struggles, I think the fact that she had been public about her struggles, like not that long before Force Awakens, I think actually right around the time of the announcement of, the sale happened and the movies are happening, and we're waiting for confirmation, but it sounds like the big 3 are coming back. A friend of mine gave me a copy of the book version of Carrie Fisher's one-woman show, Wishful Drinking, that has the picture of her as Leia with her head, collapsed in her arms and a drink, knocked over. And it's just great Carrie Fisher's sense of humor of like, we're going to have a sense of humor about it, but we're going to be honest about the ups and downs. And I think the fact that, and I knew that there wasn't, actual stage version of that. So I don't think I was worried about Carrie Fisher being like up in the public eye. What I was worried about is how they treated the character of Leia. And I think I had a hard time putting it into words at the time, but I think what I was feeling is just like, she is, a character who should be treated as a human, of course, real person with real wants, real needs, all that. But that's Leia, and she's got to be presented with respect. Put some respect on the legend of Leia. And I think, in my opinion, this is totally an opinion thing, we've got a lot of issues still with how we handle age in storytelling. Yeah. And in particular, we've got this, weird divide that has, it was almost, really accelerated by, Liam Neeson kicking ass in the whole Taken series. But in general, we have this like, men can be action heroes until they die, Yeah. And that's not always been extended to the way women age. And I think because she was many things in the original trilogy, but one of them was an action hero, like you could immediately picture much older Harrison Ford. He had been Indiana Jones again, being like don't move as fast as I do, but I still kick ass. And like, how were they going to confer a different kind of respect on Leia? Because I didn't expect to see her running around, punching people. And that was what my concern was. And I really liked in Force Awakens that they let her own her age, that the story of Leia was that she was a leader who, had this great sense of grace and wisdom, but she still felt vital and proactive,
Yeah, she wasn't at the far end of the table. She's front and center. She's out there. She's landing on the planet, and maybe in this one, not blast her in hand. Last Jedi, she does at one point. Yeah, I know what you mean. It was all the things that you just listed above: the politician, royalty, spy, rebel leader, all this stuff. Was just an updated version that was true to the character and highlighted what she was at that time, at that age. Not necessarily Carrie, but Leia too. So I know there was a great realistic fear going in, right? For a lot of reasons. And I think that they handled that well.
Yeah. And I think maybe what it is there can be sometimes with aging, the story is let's deny it, and let's just wink at it of like, the men are still running around and punching. And there's this kind of a funny joke about how it hurt their hand more because they have arthritis, but they're still kind of just doing the same thing. Yeah. And I think what they did, which I was concerned about, was really had respect for the fact that Leia was older and added to that story of leadership by respecting the grace and wisdom that comes with age, And I think that's the thing that I was most excited about, that my fear was entirely unfounded, that they respected age in this great way that I honestly think should happen even more often in our big genre storytelling.
Yeah. Presented her as is with all respect due.
Yeah. The glory of age. So excellent. With that, let's move into discussing of Force Awakens itself and Leia's journey in Force Awakens. So Leia is the clear leader of this small resistance movement against the First Order. She once again, like she did in A New Hope, sets the plot in motion. She has two motivations: find Luke to restore hope to the fight, and if possible, bring her son Ben back home. She sends, at the beginning of the movie, even before we get to see it in the crawl, she sends Poe to find Luke. She reunites with her estranged husband Han. She sends the Resistance to destroy Starkiller Base. She gives Han the explicit mission to bring their son Ben back home. Leia is devastated when she senses Han's death through the Force, And then through the work of all of her various agents and members of the Resistance, she does succeed in destroying Starkiller Base, finding a map to Luke's location, and then sends Rey, Chewie, and R2 to bring him home. So she has some successes. She completes her mission of taking the next step forward and finding Luke. She takes out Starkiller Base, but she has this devastating failure that Han is unable to bring Ben home. And when I say she has the failure, I say that in terms of she is the one who instigated the mission. That's her goal. That's what she wants to accomplish. So by the end of the film, Leia's successfully, through her agents, accomplished some of her goals, but not one of them, at least not yet. So any general thoughts on that summary of Leia's journey through Force Awakens?
No, well said. She's at the center, from the crawl to the great stuff at the end with Rey, where she's very princess-like too, capturing that side of what she is. But you feel the general side. You feel it's very active. You feel there's attention, and she's driving everyone through that, either pushing them through, leading them through, failures and all. Leia's front and center in that regard. And even though, again, she doesn't show up till a little bit later, part of the restructuring of the story, the novelization, you get to spend some time with her in the beginning. I think it works in the movie the way as is. But that's there for you if you want to find it too. It's definitely it's easy to think that she's not part of the story on a headlining kind of way, but you've summarized it real nicely. She is driving a lot of things here.
Yeah, almost everybody who is acting is in some way acting as a result of following General Leia. Let's talk about what parts of Leia's legacy from the original trilogy are emphasized in The Force Awakens. You kind of hinted at it, that there's parts of Leia here, and you wanted more, and you got them in the next two sequel trilogy films. But what part of Leia's legacy do you think is here in The Force Awakens?
Well, as her opponents would say, just a warmonger. That's really no. But great stuff in Bloodlines there too. I think it's you talk about steadfast, the stalwart. She is the rebel, and she is the one that knows this is what they have to do, and to get them all through that, she is a beacon of hope. This starts the crawl, sets the tone. What's our first conversation? To me, she's royalty. It's all about Leia, and Leia being this guiding light for so many in the galaxy, and she is going back to, and funny, because we'll see Rogue One after this film when you're going to back in time, but she's hope. She is hope, and that word hope gets tossed around a lot when discussing Star Wars, and they say it a lot in Rogue One, and we can have some fun with that, but it's there for a reason. She's got a powerful one at the end. The character does. So I think she absolutely represents the hope to get through this all, and the hope needed to make this fight.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that hope is a word that it gets used a lot, and even more in this era. And I think it's great to sort of track what Leia's relationship to hope is,
Mm-hmm.
And got some more thoughts about that as it gets more explicit in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and all that.
Right.
But I love what you're saying, that in some ways Force Awakens is really wrestling with the legacy of Leia, of like, even what should we call her, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an announcement. It's kind of a part of the publicity that she's still a princess, but in this movie, we really call her General Leia. We even get that moment where 3PO screws up and is like, General. And then you're right, the very first conversation, it's not just that Poe is on this mission from his boss, it's that there is weight that Leia sent him. And in that royalty line is basically making it explicit that Leia is such an important figure to so many people, means so many different things to different people, that the first conversation is all honoring her, but a slight debate about who is she, right. Because Poe says General, right? And Laura Santeca is saying, to me, she's royalty. Has always felt like that's absolutely respecting the princess part of her, but you also get like, this is Laura Santeca, a mysterious Force Church guy.
Yeah.
And it's always felt to me that he means royalty, because like, she is a symbol of the Force. She is, she is Queen of the Light. That's how she's royalty to Laura Santeca, is the way that I kind of take it on an emotional level. So it feels to me like even though Leia doesn't get as big of a part in Force Awakens, it's this very important part of her, the story, that the legend that we're telling her about her, that everybody is kind of trying to decide where to put the emphasis on all of this great meaning that she carries.
Yeah, well, what I love about the moment with Lord too is it's not condescending. It's not a pat on the head of, oh, that's right, she's a general now. He acknowledges that and says, yeah, to me she's royalty, which it represents a lot of what you're talking about. The Church of the Force connection, great. Yeah, he might actually be like, yeah, no, we got to pay attention to her. She's got Queen of the Light Side, like you said. That's a great term.
Yeah, we literally worship her. Yeah,
yeah, literally. But just it is kind of this like, she is. It's almost like he's saying, yeah, she's that, and she's also this. She's everything, and it's such a warm. He's saying it with such warmth too, and it pays to me. He's paying respect to everything that she is and was, and I love the delivery there.
Yeah. So I like that it kind of sets up these questions of who is she, but then I think actively in the film, there's a couple of the elements of her character that are really there. Mm-hmm. I think she doesn't get a ton of comedy lines, but I think that using wit to kind of deal with hard things is there. The line of don't do that on what anything is that's great married banter. It still feels very much like the person who said, would it help if I get out and pushed, but at a different point in life, who has kind of a different flavor of humor because of age. We talked a lot about how Leia in the original trilogy is presented as the leader, and she is, and we get to see moments where she is in charge and she is leading. But this is the kind of idea that we all grew up with, is Leia's the one who's in charge. She's the leader. But then you watch the original trilogy and like, yeah, but there are other people around. Right. In this one, at least for the Resistance, she is the leader, period. Everyone answers to her. There's no Dodonna. There's no Riken. There's no Maydeen. There's no Mothma. This is Leia's show. She is the leader, period. And I think there's some importance in that.
I absolutely loved that, and yeah, it was confusing. I mean, the crawl of New Hope, basically, it's a princess and her people. You're right to question, well, who else is ranking above? She's the princess, and the story unfolds a little bit, and I love everything in the original trilogy about the command structure of the rebellion. But I thought it was the General Solo thing. Excuse me, General Leia thing. I felt that. I loved that. I thought that was just a absolutely wonderful homage to what she was to so many of us watching in the 80s and beyond.
Yeah, and I really feel like that's what the general thing is about, is this emphasis on she is not a figurehead. She's not a spy. She's not third in command or second in command of Echo Base. She is the leader, period. She is the general. She's in charge. This is her show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think that part of her that we really got to see develop in the original trilogy, that she's got wisdom. Clearly, we've got that great line of talking to Luke in A New Hope about Han has to follow his own path. No one can choose it for him. So we definitely get wisdom. But then throughout Empire, with her opening up to letting herself be in love, to Return of the Jedi, of letting herself open up to the possibility of the Force and being able to truly sense things on a different level. A lot of original trilogy journey is about her opening up to being as the full power of her as a wise and intuitive person. And I feel like that's really, really on display in The Force Awakens, even though the things that she says about Kylo Ben don't pan out in this film, they do down the line in the trilogy. So she is absolutely correct about everything that she says about who Ben is and what he needs. It doesn't pan out this time, but it does down the line. And also just the way that we see her, the light touch with Rey, that she just senses what Rey is and what Rey needs. And like, yep, there are conversations that we don't see on screen that can be in books. But just for the story told on screen, you're just like, yeah, it's Leia. She is royalty of the light side. She knows that Rey is powerful. She knows that Rey has lost things. She knows she can sense what Rey feels and what Rey needs, and she's there for her. It's such a fulfillment of Leia as being an incredibly intuitive character.
What I love about Force Awakens to that of this wisdom thing. It's very prevalent in Last Jedi, but she's down and out for part of the picture, and she's referred to as this, well, Leia said. Well, in Force Awakens, we get to see a lot of what Leia says, and you're so right to highlight that conversation with Han. A lot of things you can pull from that and connect it even straight to Episode 9. I love everything you're saying there, because it's just, we talk about her being, she's hope, but she's like active hope. She's active wisdom in The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. She's active hope, active wisdom. So let's talk about some of her active moments. For you in The Force Awakens, what are Leia's most impactful moments? Drama, comedy, wisdom, anything? What are the moments that really hit you?
I start from the beginning. When that ship lands and you start to realize, and the thing, going back to the very first viewing of Force Awakens, like I'm so swept up in it that I'm not mentally tracking like, oh man, Luke hasn't shown up yet. Or, it's like, the idea you and I talked this week is, the idea that we thought going in, like that Luke's, don't worry, there's going to be Luke toys from the third act. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't active. And I remember when you start to realize like the resistance shows up to save the day on Takodana, there was this little beat of a beat in my brain and my heart of like, oh wait, we're going to see Leia. Oh my God, Leia. I got so wrapped up in the story, I didn't see it. So when that door comes down and Han's standing there almost like he's ready to go on a first date again, nervous, shuffling, but ready to see her. And she comes out, and that smile from Carrie Fisher as Leia, it was straight to all of us, right at the camera. I love the shot. I love the 3PO red arm beat afterwards. Well documented. I love that one. But it's been a long time, but here I am, and it's going to be okay. I feel it in the story and outside the story. I love that moment.
I totally agree with you. I think, there's a part of me that wanted Leia scenes earlier so that we could have, really gotten into the politics of this situation. But, what is in the film, this is the moment that she comes back into it right after Han saw Kylo. It's so powerful, and it is such a great entrance. Obviously, they used the Chewie, we're home moment for Han in the trailers, and the cliffhanger of Luke turning is, one of the greatest Star Wars moments. I think you and I both feel this is underrated in terms of she walks off. Han is waiting there with this energy of, I am terrible at emotions and I'm feeling a lot of them. It's always been a challenge in our relationship. I don't know if I want to yell, run away, apologize, cry, all of the above. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. And she walks out with that smile that just says, I know all of those things you're feeling,
Yeah.
And I'm feeling them too. And I wrote it down almost as like emotional swagger.
Yeah.
Like she just walks out there and it has that look of like, there are 8 million unspoken things between us. And yes, they're extremely hard, but I'm going to handle them. And so are you. Come on, let's go.
Totally. Yeah. All in that moment, all in a look.
All in a look. And and that's like that wisdom of age. Like, it's not that she couldn't have done that, when she was, in her 20s, but it's different of like all of these years of baggage. And I'm going to wipe them away with a little smile and say, it's fine. We'll get through it. We got to do this.
And 3PO forever not understanding the moment. Well, what I know I've talked about it on spots. I don't want to remix it, but just I was blown away by the idea that the great love story of my time wasn't necessarily in place of this movie, that they had separated or been estranged, and that there was problems, and I would never would have thought that would have been the case. And I never would have said that's what I wanted. And now I can't see it any other way, because it just really worked. And that smile, because you're well enough into the movie where you're like, what happened with them?
Yeah, I mean, Han says to Maz, Leia doesn't want to see me.
Yeah, I love this. I love everything with Maz. Go home, Han. That's great. But yeah, that smile, it just exactly does what you say. You're just like, whatever happened, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get through it, because it's almost not important right now. What's important here?
Yeah. And on that 3PO beat. I agree with you. I think that's so it's so funny. I think one of the most successfully funny moments of 3PO being somebody who's supposed to understand human cyborg relations and doesn't, and just sticking himself in the middle. But also underrated, the look that Leia gives him, where she basically tells 3PO to shut up with her eyes alone, and it's funnier than anything she could have said. Of just like, she's got that look of like, we've talked about this for decades, droid. Do you want to shut up now?
It's a great moment. Great moment.
Yeah. So what are other impactful moments for you?
Yeah, there's a bigger one. Maybe we'll talk more. So that conversation with Han in the base on Dakar, and everything. You made reference to one of the jokes in it. Don't do that. Anything, but the truth and her kind of setting Han on a mission. I think maybe we can come back to that in a second. But I gotta tell you, Chewie controversy aside, and I'm one of those give Chewie a hug folks at the end of episode 7. Come on, JJ, you might miss that one, but whatever. But I love her, just her warm kind of embrace of Rey, and going to what you kind of talked about of what she feels and what she knows. But for Rey, who is just this, desert ragamuffin out in the world, just doesn't know what's going on, and is now part of this big adventure and just went through all this stuff. It's similar to Leia's smile to Han of, I know, but don't worry about it. We're here now. I really love that moment with Rey. It's so motherly. It's so warm. It's comforting. It's a leader. It's hope. It's everything Leia represents to me is in this, like, come here. I don't even need to know. I already know. And we're going to get through it too. I think that's a real powerful moment.
It is incredibly powerful because it's in Carrie Fisher and Daisy Ridley's performance that Rey is overwhelmed and distraught and absolutely needs someone. But the way it's framed too, of we get pulled back and we really see that this big clump of people are greeting and mourning and moving forward, getting Finn the help he needs, and then away from that big clump of of different kinds of energy is Leia and Rey. And Leia really seeing that Rey needs something different, that she's experienced something different, is so great. For me, out of that whole conversation with Han about, a little bit of the backstory of what happened to basically their marriage, that, Ben fell, they were both distraught and they went their separate ways. We get that sense that they had the kind of firebrand up and down marriage that we would expect them to have from the original trilogy, but that was truly losing Ben that broke them. But Leia being, without, really super using the word hope, being that symbol of hope and that symbol of certainty that, even though we've experienced tragedy, it doesn't mean this is over. But I think in particular, the delivery, the sort of, there's something I think about the specificity of the way Carrie Fisher, a shorter person, is looking up at Han, but is the one who is clearly in power in the conversation. Right. And the soft delivery on, we can still save him, me, you. It's always been powerful. It's always had a great emotional, wisdom and punch, even though she is just as much in torment and pain as Han is. But the fact that it kind of does just play out that way exactly in Rise of Skywalker makes it even more powerful.
I watched that scene this morning. I watched a few of the scenes, and I wasn't surprised by that. But we talk often here and gone into great detail. But even in conversation out in the public, when someone asks me, or I hear that complaint about Rise of Skywalker didn't connect with it, I go, I always say it speaks constantly with the previous 8 films, particularly the previous 2 or 3. It speaks. It's in constant communication with those films. And I watched this scene this morning, and I'm like, the playbook's right there. It's all about Luke. No, we can save.
Yeah, we're his parents. Luke is a Jedi. You're his father. And the we can still save him. Me, you. It's so great. So powerful.
Yeah, it's a great scene. I won't. I'll try not to harp on it too much more. And this isn't a swipe at the Legends EU stuff, which I occasionally will be a little snarky at. I got it. Like it's we extended the Star Wars story, and Luke is the moody Jedi starting a school and saving the galaxy, and Han and Leia. It's a great love story we all were inspired by, even though we probably didn't see the trouble warning signs that we should have. as fans. And so the books kind of carry that. And the problem is their kids, or the problem is the dark side. The fact that the sequel trilogy to the big theme of this legacy hangs over every part of these characters' lives, just as it hangs over ours. And this is what happened. It kind of got their love story kind of got crushed by that. It continues to work, and that's why this scene over the years has become one of my favorites of the sequel era. When I just kind of liked it in seeing the film, right? Just like, hey, cool. Let's get to some fighting. I can sometimes fall prey to that. I keep coming back to this scene more.
Yeah. I think this conversation could shift from just being Leia to a general love of the sequels and why they matter. So I will try to be cautious about that as well. But I just love what you're bringing up. To me, I think sometimes there's that question of like, well, what did the sequel trilogy add? And like, well, these things happened in the prequel trilogy. Anakin fell. His children restored the galaxy. But his shadow remains. Vader's shadow remains. It's affecting Kylo. It's right here in this conversation. Like, Han isn't saying anything. I don't think Han's saying there's too much Vader in him to be hurtful to Leia or to blame Leia. But it's like that shadow, that reality of what is in your blood was too much for our son, is kind of what Han's saying. And it really makes it, it's dotted everywhere that the sequel trilogy is about everybody dealing with what has come before. And even after you're gone, even after, Anakin returned and defeated Palpatine for a time, your actions reverberate, right? And it's still there. It's still there in this conversation between, this old couple who loves one another, but has experienced tragedy.
Yeah. The shadows, man. The weight of shadows. Star Wars episode 7, The Weight of Shadows. That would have worked for me too.
Yeah. All right. So a couple other moments that I want to talk about, and I feel like you are circling around them.
Sure.
I want to talk about the "if you see our son, bring him home" moment.
Yeah.
Is that the one that you had been holding back on?
Yeah. There's so much in there.
Yeah. For myself, this is back when I was doing Jedi Alliance, I was having hosting in the run up to Force Awakens, a old Star Wars talking YouTube show. One of the joking things I would ask people is, how many times do you think you're going to cry during the first Force Awakens? It was on my mind, and this is the moment that made me cry in the theater. Often makes me cry. Just the sheer emotion of it. That it is just truly seeing, older people play really true concerns of older people who have adult children who have lost their way, and just the absolute realness of it, and how incredibly great in real Carrie Fisher's emotion is in this moment, and the comfort of being held by Han after, all these years of trauma, and that there is still such great love between them. There's so much just emotion. But then all of this is just, it is Leia sending Han on the mission. And so much of Leia's identity is she is often the leader. She is often back at the strategy board. She is often the person far away who can sense what's really going on. And one of her weights as princess, as royalty, as leader, as general is she sees what needs to be done, and she hands out assignments, and she sends her agents out. And this is incredibly emotional, but there's so much of Leia in this. It's incredibly emotional, it's incredibly personal and intimate, but she is also giving her husband a mission to bring her son home.
And it's the mission. It's the mission of all three of these films, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And we've talked about what this moment means to me now, and how I quite frankly kind of miss some of the stuff, just kind of carrying some expectations into that movie of what I wanted, and getting a little, unfortunately, cynical on Han's death, of, a little bit more worried about the destination as opposed to the journey. And so retroactively, this is just a great moment, purposeful.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on favorite Leia moments, impactful moments?
No, not so. I mean, they're understand there's less Leia in Force Awakens, right? And then going back to what my thought was, like, coming out of this movie, I still had fears of, like, Carrie was still with us. So I was like, give me more. If she wants it, if Carrie wanted to be engaged with it as much, and it seems like she did. And she make all of her jokes and had a, get shape and everything like that. But some of that's real world and insurance that you need to take out on these actors, and her problems are so well documented. A lot of real world conversations about that. But I really think she felt good and wanted it, and came back for Force Awakens the best of her abilities. And so there's less moments to choose, I think, but they're very impactful. What is there?
Yeah, totally agree. So looking at a little bit at the structure and what is going on with the character of Leia, just like in A New Hope, she instigates a ton of the action and endures horrific loss. She lost a lot of people in Hosnian Prime. We don't really spend time with that on the movie, but you have to know that's true. And then, of course, the huge and devastating loss of Han at the hands of her son. But she remains in this position of being the leader, directing others to act throughout this movie. Does that work for you? What's the power of seeing her as the leader who sends people on missions?
It is again going to the part of the sequel's purpose, and some of it being passing on the next generation. Well, someone's got to be there and do that, but someone's got to have the trust to do that. And I think even though some of the lessons are really overt, maybe in Last Jedi, particularly with Poe, and Poe's kind of he's got hero vibes in this one. It's all going well, everything goes well for Poe, even when he crash lands. He's good and got a cool jacket and all that stuff there. But I think there's great value in again, active leadership and mentorship, and someone in both roles at the same time. Obi-Wan was a mentor. We didn't get to see him. He wasn't really viewed as a leader. He was viewed as help. He was viewed as maybe the answer, and he knows maybe he isn't. So he's already, by the time we see him in A New Hope, his purpose is to pass on the baton.
Yeah.
We just hadn't seen in 77 or whenever you first see that movie back in the day, we just hadn't lived with that character before to be disappointed, right? I wanted him to be the one to fight. That would have been the discussions. So this one, episode 7, it is the purpose and the great value. I think there's power and value and mentorship and leadership. And this all kind of shows Leia all through this movie. To me, she's got staying power, man. You talk about being steadfast and stalwart, a person, like staying power, even over Luke. God bless Luke, but he's off God knows where. Leia's here. And that's Leia and Hoth not evacuated until to the very end. That is Leia not accepting just being knocked off her speeder bike and a little creature. She's gonna stick through it all. And I think that's there as well.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying about really remembering structurally. She's the one who's still there. You go back to that Bridge on Endor conversation between Luke and Leia, where she's like, "Why don't you run away?" And I wish I could go with you. And he's like, "No, you don't. You've always been strong." And almost what's implied in that is stronger than everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what comes, losing Ben breaks Luke. It breaks Han. It certainly hurts Leia, but she keeps doing what she feels must be done. She's the one who is steadfast, who doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. So that idea of her being steadfast and that she's the one who goes on no matter what, despite pain, it's there in the original trilogy. But as we discussed, like in A New Hope, you can interpret it a lot of different ways. The truth of the character is that she comforts Luke and says, "I'm sorry, you lost a man you've known for a very short amount of time." While just ignoring that her, not focusing on that her whole planet was destroyed, and she keeps marching forward. And we had a great discussion about different ways to look at that from a modern perspective. Mm-hmm. But looking at a film made now that now being 2015, it makes those things that had become sort of implicit based on those scenes in the original trilogy just explicit. She is a leader who is going on. She's chosen her path. The leader's where she can make the most difference, and she is going to continue despite any amount of personal trauma that she has been through. She lost Ben. And I think what's really important, one of the moments I wanted to highlight, is this gives her that moment that she didn't really have in A New Hope. Like, obviously she's on the Death Star when Alderaan blows up and she's distraught.
Mhm.
But the shot of her sensing Han's death,
Mm.
obviously that is, we kind of intuitively know that she would feel that because she is an intuitive Force user and is connected in that way. It helps drive home to the audience. I think, the weight of it, it gives somebody else, another character who is feeling the reaction that we are feeling, so we don't move past it too quickly. But for Leia, unlike what happens sometimes in the original trilogy, it absolutely centers her grief. And it says, look at how much pain this woman is experiencing. We're really going to see it. That moment where she feels it and sits down, and the look on her face is just gut wrenching. And I think it's just really important to center her grief.
Center it, let her feel it. The idea too that she says, we both, to Han, we both went back to what we do well. It's politics, it's leadership, it's all that kind of stuff. But I wonder how much of that is Leia acknowledging, like, yeah, I went back to what I know, which is pressing on in spite of my own pain and not dealing with it, and not having time to deal with it. And that was the way I dealt with it. And maybe in that moment, she can't ignore it. And she gets that moment. Well said. She gets it.
Yeah, she gets that moment that she really needed. Last question.
Unfortunately, I will add, unfortunately, for Han fans.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is a tragedy all across the board. Last question about the Force Awakens. Why do you think Leia chooses to send Rey to Luke? We've talked a lot about her being the person who is staying there, being the leader, keeping everything held together, and sending others off on missions. But it's come up in Star Wars discussions. It's Luke's her brother. Why didn't she go?
This is a great question, and did some contemplating on it, because you see, we're cheating here. You go to Last Jedi, and R2 invokes the memory of Leia to kind of nudge Luke a little bit, right? And I think it's effective. I think it's there, but that to me doesn't happen unless Rey shows up, and I think, similar to Han can be the only one to save Ben, or at least start that process. Leia's got part of that as well, of course. But I think she knew that this is part of her wisdom, that this would be what's important. That Luke, if she shows up, it might be easier. It might be easier for him to be like, nah, there's just no. I'm not coming back. I'm not doing this. But hey, you also got to pass on what you've learned, and now knowing what we know of the story of her putting down a blade, all that kind of stuff we can talk about. But you know what I mean? I think Rey shows up with that blade in hand, and it just, the weight of it and the duty of it is going to weigh heavy on Luke, and really, really, hopefully, get him to question what he's out there for.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. I think there could be a practical. Leia truly believes she's needed on Dakar. They need to do a quick evacuation. There's that sort of like, doesn't make logical sense. But I think it is far more important to me about the intuition that Leia knows Rey is the next generation. Leia's got to be sensing just like, the absolute power, emanating from Rey. She knows she's the next generation. She knows Rey being young is a symbol of hope herself, of she is the next generation. In theory, Rey has communicated to Leia that, this lightsaber called to me, and really Leia seeing like, okay, I am busy trying to hold everything together and pass on what I have learned. Luke needs to do that too. He needs to pass on what he has learned. If I go there, maybe we're just going to rehash everything. And if I ask him why he won't come back, he's going to say, you were there. We've been through this. But if I send a fresh young face that makes him remember what it was like when he was starting his journey, he's going to have to explain himself to her.
Yeah.
And I think she sends Rey to Luke because she intuitively senses the plot of The Last Jedi, which is Luke has to explain his choice to Rey.
Yeah, look, I think to boil it down as best I can for myself here, I think it's a little bit like a bike that Luke fell off of, and here's another bike. You fell off because training my son, and you feel you lost him, and you had to pack up your bags and head away. Here's the redemption song, Here it is. You got to do this again. You got to keep going. You got to face it. And then let's not forget, now that we know a little bit more of the story, we can have fun with that. And I really think it's fun. If Leia says, "Hey, I can't continue being a Jedi because the weight of the galaxy, of leading the galaxy, which is was a concern of hers and an expressly stated reason," and then also what's going on with Ben, and she says, "Hey, someone's going to pick up this blade again." I think she's sending Rey. It's almost like a little message. Here's that person, Luke. What you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. And that could have been the other title of Last Jedi of Star Wars Episode 8. What you gonna do, Luke?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think let's take a break now, and then we'll dive into The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and look at Leia's journey through those two films. We'll be right back.
Hey, ForceCenter friends, make sure you're keeping up to date on all the great content from Jennifer Landa. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, you whippersnappers, ForceCenter's own Jennifer Landa continues to bring you fun, informative, and insightful laughs and moments.
Also, Jennifer brings her experience and perspective as a Star Wars-loving mother to her DIY projects, blogs, and more, so be sure to head on over to JennyLanda.com, that's JENILANDA.com, for articles like how to make your own Darth Maul sneakers or 10 unique Star Wars baby gift ideas.
Follow Jen on Twitter and Instagram at Jennifer Landa, and on TikTok as Jennifer Landa 1138.
We are back to finish our discussion of Leia's journey through the sequel trilogy. We are moving on into The Last Jedi. Leia's legacy has really been reestablished in Force Awakens. We have seen her as an older woman being in charge, but we go into The Last Jedi and Leia has a lot of multifaceted motivations. She still does want to bring Luke back into the fight. Leia wants to make sure that the Resistance survives. She's very clear on that. This isn't about moving forward. This is just about surviving, living on to inspire. She also wants to explicitly pass on what she knows to future leaders. She demotes Poe for not thinking like a leader. She uses the Force explicitly in a big way to survive a brutal attack on her ship. Once again, like in Return of the Jedi, the idea of Leia has a big impact on Luke, even though they're not physically together for much of the movie. It is what the idea of Leia, the idea of her having hope for Luke, encourages him to take action. Leia and Luke reawaken one another, I think, and once reawakened, Leia sets Poe straight and gets the Resistance safely to Crate. She suffers the loss of her old friends Holdo and Akbar and so many Resistance members who die in this movie, and Leia almost loses hope. Then Luke returns, reignites her hope. Leia is very pleased to see Poe move into a leadership role by the end of the movie. She senses Luke transcend into the Force, and she ends the film comforting Rey by telling her they have everything they need. So that is really a lot of Leia in The Last Jedi. Any thoughts on that general summary of what she goes through?
No, I mean, we can joke almost every time, but it's just a lot there, unless you forget or overlook her contributions to this story. We hear, episode 9 might have been her film, if things gone differently in the real world. This is very much her film to me as well. It's a Luke and Leia film. And we get the one moment at the end, and because of that, it's tremendously powerful. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on there, and I love that it touches on the almost loses hope. Can't wait to dive into that, because I think in a weird way she has a right to every now and then.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when I was putting together this summary and then reading through it again, trying to track in these movies, what does she want as a character at the beginning, and does she succeed? And, she goes through absolute hell in this movie, like almost every film that Leia's in. But by the end, when she's telling Rey that they have everything they need, I was like, well, okay, there's a lot of ways to take that. But, what does Leia mean when they have everything? What are the things? And it made me feel like even though the film is devastating in a lot of ways, in some ways it is a victory for Leia, because I think the everything she means is hope. We have restored or kept alive the spark of hope, started to pass on leadership. We have knowledge, like literally the Jedi books, but also just everything that Rey has experienced. So in a way, I feel like the fact that Leia starts this movie with just the motivations of stay alive, keep the flame alive, pass on what we have learned, Leia succeeds. This film is a victory for Leia. She gets those things that they need.
Yeah, we're talking in Rise about the bigger victory, and it may be completion, a more complete victory than even the one in Return of the Jedi, and how that affects Leia. But I even wrote down the note of just this might be the victory right here, and it's you touched on the victory of survival, and what that means. You could also, by the way, I think you can go into some real personal levels of me as a depression sufferer. Sometimes I just say I just need to get to the next hour if it hits hard. I need to get to tomorrow. I can't win this battle, but I can survive it to fight another day. This movie's all about that from the beginning. And rewatching Last Jedi this time around, I love that opening sequence. But it's just so clear of like, you did it, Poe. We can get out of here. And he messes up then, right?
Yeah.
All the way to what you're describing at the very end. It's a devastating defeat if you look at it on Crate in a way, just in terms of resources and personnel. But it's just a matter of getting through. And I think sometimes that's for us. That's for us just to get through. A little bit of that save what you love, not fight what you hate, is a little bit about just survival for yourself too. And you can boil it down to some real self-help personal ways, which is fitting from Carrie Fisher. I'm sure there was minutes and days and hours in her life where it's like, I just need to get to tomorrow. Just need to survive. I don't need the big win. I just need to survive.
Yeah, I just need that little sparkling bit of hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep that tiny flame alight. And there is so much in this film about Leia and hope, and really making some ideas that were floating around about Leia really, really concrete with that. I love that you're connecting it to the personal journey of both yourself and Carrie Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me that this film really it cements several elements of Leia's character, of things that you could kind of talk with fans and be like, yeah, we know that, but this film just put them in great, beautiful stone. Seeing her use the Force in a big way, she expresses direct grief about loss. We get to see that moment in The Force Awakens where she feels Han's death, but she just says, as a human, to Holdo, no more loss. I don't know if I can take anymore. It's such a human time for Leia to finally say, like, I'm not just a figure, I'm a character, I'm human, and I don't know if I can personally lose you too. So that's made explicit. They're explicit words about hope that are ascribed to her, right? It highlights her leadership and makes it really concrete and specific that I am the leader now, but Poe, I would like you to be the leader in the future. So for you, these moments that cement elements of her character, which ones are powerful to you? Which ones are the most important? Where do you go with that?
It's so funny. I just want to keep saying hope over and over again. But I think being able to, I think being able to manage the big picture and not get lost in the weeds, and that's what a lot of, going back to the survival thing. But it's just like we're so taught to win. We're so taught to you gotta get the finish line, and that's your worth, and you want the rebels or resistance to win. You want that, but to get there, you're gonna need hope, and sometimes it's just about surviving again. And that was so much of Leia in the original trilogy, right? Alderaan's gone. But we have the plans. Our base is destroyed, but we just got to get out of here. We got to get to the rendezvous point. We got to rescue Luke. You rescue Luke, and then Jedi rescue Han. When it's down and out, when it's dire, Leia's there to be like, find a way forward. I'm knocked off a speeder bike. We talked about it last week. A little teddy bear shows up. I see an ally. I don't see a problem. I see an ally to get us forward. Going forward, and the hope of going forward, which is the fuel you need. That's cemented in this film.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is absolutely great. And definitely going to talk more about hope, because I really do want to, as you're saying, focus on that moment and about her faltering in hope. But I think for me, I like that the leadership is made really concrete. It is her just expressing that to Poe at the beginning, and then really tying the bow on it of like, why are you looking at me? Follow him. When Poe finally steps up and comes up with the leadership idea, it's such a beautiful moment that it's such a victory for Leia, and it's a funny line. It's well delivered by Carrie Fisher, but it's like, victory. I got him to see the way he needs to look at this. The Force flight is so powerful to me, and I know there are people who don't like it or struggle with it, and a lot of issues tied up in that. But for me, before we got everything we got in Rise of Skywalker, it, really fulfilled the promise of she is a powerful Force user. That, you're wrong, Leia, you have that power too. Luke saying that, it's seen that, yes, she does have that power, but and that was one of the things that I always wondered about and wanted in the sequel trilogy. It'd be great to see her use her power. But I never wanted it to be like, I didn't want her to be with a lightsaber and slashing people apart. I wanted to see her use it. I think early ForceCenters, like, I want to see her just like, push something over from far away with just a flick of her wrist to show power. But this is even better because it's her using the Force to make crystal clear what we say about her, that she is a steadfast character that endures pain and keeps going because she needs to get the mission for the greater good done. And that's always the way I felt about that scene. What's powerful about it is she just experienced loss. They're in a horrible situation. She just had that connection, which I'm sure was painful with Kylo. And with all that, what does she do? Is she just reaches out with her hand to just get back to work. That Force power is just, it's the Force power of, I'm not done. I've got stuff to do, and it's not for me. It's for the greater good. It's to pass on what I know. It's to keep this all alive. And I love not only that we get to see her use that huge Force power, but it reinforces her as a steadfast, strong character who keeps on despite the trauma.
Yeah, great meaning to the use. And I'm like you too. I got to tell you, going into even episode 7, I was never of the mindset, and you could, skim through anything I've said before in the end of the show. I never was of the mindset that that Luke was going to pull out his lightsaber, Leia was going to pull out hers, and the adventure begins. But I wanted that dealt with, meaning, we know what she was at the end of Return of the Jedi. And we know what we got to experience a little bit with the Legends and EU and just those kind of stories. But so I you're right. I think this was the way I kind of envisioned it. Not specifically, but just that the Force, the use of the Force would be something different. And we got it. And I get it. I get it. The whole Leia Poppins BS and everything, fine. I guess in your first viewing, it might look a little awkward. But that music hits and the eyes open up and you realize what's happening. It's powerful. It's powerful. A little execution, if it, rubs you wrong, fine. I can't take that away. But yeah, I think it was so much purpose.
Yeah. And for me, I don't have any, execution issues with it myself. I understand other people do, but for me, I think some of it can just be like, we don't get to see moments like that as much, and it's seen a middle-aged older woman being, using power in this very specific and very different kind of way. We don't have a lot. I think the reason that people made the Mary Poppins comparison is because we don't have a lot of other images of an older woman using power that way. And that makes it only more powerful to me personally.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the nail there with that one. But I also like, it's like, and I like, again, I get it. I'll say I get it. But like, I asked myself the question after my first viewing of like, yeah, it looked a little weird. It definitely looked a little weird to me. What else? What was I expecting?
Yeah.
She's in space. She's using something called the Force.
Yes.
I don't know what I would have wanted differently.
Yes. To me, I think the CGI is fine for me. It looks as realistic as Ant-Man being very tall. Like, yeah, he's not really tall. She's not really floating in space. I get it.
That's I'm saying it to myself. I'm just like, after all, like, what? Well, okay, yeah. What else? What else would I want? Or arms flailing, like what? Like flying like Superman? Like what would I have wanted? I got a powerful moment. That music cue hits.
Oh my gosh!
Because
yes,
also
it does.
too here, I don't. I had it when she. I didn't think she'd die that way, right? I didn't think that the character would be removed from the story in this way. But when she gets blasted out of that command deck there, for 2 seconds in my head, and I know I'm not alone, it was like, is this what they had to do because of Carrie's loss? Like, so I didn't know. So when it cuts back to her and the music plays, like, all right, I'm there for that. It was powerful for that stuff too.
No, The Last Jedi was extremely effective at shaking things up enough to put me off of my watching game. And it definitely had the, like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And I think it made it even richer because it was, such a validation of her strength and her power and so moving because of that. She's got a ton of great moments of comedy. I think it seems like that from behind the scenes, we know, wonderful Carrie Fisher is saying, I take my meetings in my house. Well, I sit on my bed and drink some Coke. So you come to my house, Rian Johnson, and I'll tell you what I would like. And obviously one of the things that, has been reported that she wanted is more moments of comedy, and she does get them. Mm-hmm. So do you have a favorite? Do you think that moments of comedy add to the legacy of Leia, the legend of Leia? Do they help move the story forward? What are your thoughts on the comedy of Leia in The Last Jedi?
Yeah, no, there's Last Jedi is a pretty funny movie at times. For me, I think some of the comedy hits better than others, and over time, some of that changes even for me. But you just wipe that nervous expression off your face, 3PO. It's Leia, it's her, and it's Carrie, because Carrie is Leia, and all those kind of things we can always say. But also for me, stunning Poe with not one word is also her as well. It's such like a you dummy. What are you doing?
We'll talk about this later. Right now, you're getting on the transport to Crate. Yeah, no, great. I hadn't thought of the stun moment as a comedy moment, but you're right. It totally is. Wipe that nervous expression off your face is just that's just a solid joke, right? That is just a contrast and then a broken expectation of the fact that the unmoving face can't have an expression, and yet she's right. He does, wherever his soul lives, however it works, Leia is aware of it, and she knows he has a nervous expression on his face, even though it can't move, is both like funny and kind of speaks to, to me, great comedy is intuitive. It senses a truth that is not right there on the surface and brings it to the surface. And that's exactly what that moment is. The Poe, get your head out of your cockpit, which is reportedly a line that Carrie Fisher really liked, which I really like too, because it's one of those examples of using comedy to say a serious thing, right? It's a funny way to make the Star Wars point of view argument of you are looking at things as a hotshot pilot, not as a general back on the command deck. And she could have absolutely said that line. Maybe it was scripted that way at one point. But Poe, get your head out of your cockpit is just a funny way to say the exact same meaningful thing.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Final one for me is the I know what you're going to say. I changed my hair, which is, it's such a weighty scene. There's so much emotion in it. It's a great moment if you're just watching a movie and saying, yeah, as a viewer, it's great to have a little levity, but like you really go like, but Leia said that. The character Leia said that at one of her lowest moments. Why did she say that? And it makes it to me that the character of Leia, just like Carrie Fisher, knows the power of comedy to soften a difficult moment. And she knows this is going to be hard for Luke, almost like she has that smile to Han, knowing like, yep, it is going to be difficult, but we're going to get through it. This is, almost her doing that for both Luke and herself by just like let's let go a little bit of the tension so we can say what we really need to say to one another, you know. And she's in a darker point in that moment of
Very.
having really lost hope and you know, expressing to Luke of like, you know, she's about to express that she knows her son is gone, and Luke hands her that hope back by saying no one's ever really gone in a moment. So she's in a bad place. She knows Luke is just, you know, crushed with guilt, right?
Mhm.
And this fun joke just makes it a little bit easier for these siblings to talk through these difficult things they have to.
It's beyond just an icebreaker. It's a time saver. You know, let's just get to it. Yeah, you're right. I changed my hair. You know,
Yeah.
and Hamill plays it great. Just yeah,
Looks nice that way, but yeah. Yeah, it's great. Let's get to it then. One of the big moments of Last Jedi, the Leia's faltering in hope that she sends out her personal signal when they're got to crate, they're asking for help and no one's answering. She's been trying the whole film to keep just the spark of hope alive, keep the spark of rebellion against these, you know, oppressive, rigid forces of the First Order alive. And this is one of the few moments where we've ever seen her go, well, you know, we fought to the end, but the spark has gone out. There's no hope left in the galaxy, basically. What is the importance of that, of seeing Leia, this character that, you know, we say steadfast, we say she continues no matter what, and then this is a moment where she falters?
I said she's kind of has a right to. I mean, this is allowing a very realistic moment for someone who's for so long has carried the weight and been there and not left and been so just feisty and strong and it's a very real moment for me and to me it begins almost in the beginning of the movie. But you mentioned the Holdo stuff earlier, saying goodbye to her friend, you know, in story that someone she's known since her teenage years and just not wanting. And even though Leia wants to serve, she's about survival, right? But you know, she kind of knows she has to accept it, but she just doesn't want it. And I've always talked about those eyes of Crate, Leia looking out, eyes of Leia on Crate, excuse me, of Leia looking out. It's a second and a half, but to me, it is a beautiful shot that is just the weight of everything before her. It's all there, and she's going to keep fighting. She's there to watch the shuttle land, and seconds later, she's got a blaster in her hand. I think she has that right, but also it's a little bit of with Luke showing up. It's somewhat of a reward for years of her being the one, if that makes sense. Of you know, you have a right to take a deep breath and not know if you're going to go on, and someone else is going to your faith, your hope that you've had your entire life is going to be rewarded, but now it's going to be rewarded by others. Finally, everything about what you've done, everything about what you're trying to do in this picture. I don't know why I'm sounding like an old Hollywood producer today with a picture. Eh, you know what I mean? Like Luke shows up, or a version of Luke shows up. The fight's going to go on, even though she's going to be present for some of that next film. The fight goes on, but you are finally you can almost you can go now, but almost like you can falter because we got you.
Yeah, no, I think that last thing you said, everything you said is great, but that last thing you said is perfect.
No,
'Cause
sometimes it's fair. Sometimes I have to just I think on my feet, and sometimes my feet trip me. But yes, no, sometimes I work to it. So,
but yeah,
I'll
it
accept it.
is. You know, I always think of Last Jedi is, you know, people who dislike it, I think, are upset with, you know, some of the quote unquote subverting expectations, and I think that's a quote that gets, you know, taken out of context. For me, what the film does is it questions almost everything about Star Wars,
Mhm.
but it questions it in order to reaffirm it, just like a character gets challenged
Yes.
in a movie so that they can prove who they are. Almost all of the ideas of Star Wars get challenged, from, you know, what should a Jedi be? Is there ever a time where it's good to just be hot shot? You know, why do we fight? Do we have to fight? And I think one of the things that gets affirmed is it is not, you know, stupid or just a motivational poster to hold on to hope.
Mhm.
It gets communicated in a really personal way. We learn that Leia has been the carrier of this specific phrase of hope is like the sun. If you only believe in it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. We learn that while she is, you know, literally unconscious, Poe and Holdo are holding onto that. When she says to Holdo that she doesn't know if she can take much more loss, Holdo says back to her, like, you're the one who taught me how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then toward the end, we get to this moment where she is about to lose hope. And then the mission that she has been on for these last two movies is to get Luke back as this symbol of hope, pays off right at her lowest moment. I think all these things add up to making hope real, making the difficulty of holding on to it a true human challenge that Leia has had the burden of. And finally, others are there to step up and say, we've got it. We've got you. She succeeds in literally bringing Luke back and having him be this person of hope. So it really questions Leia as the holder and the keeper of hope, and whether or not that is a valid and important thing, and affirms it massively.
Yeah, it's a lot about this movie specifically. We just not let's not get into the Last Jedi conversation, right? I guess we'll revisit that again on an anniversary in the future. Yeah, I don't think it's okay to question it, to reaffirm, like you said, and just like and make sure you're on the right one. Mance Rayder telling Jon Snow, "Oh, I know what you want to be a hero," which is true, but also Jon Snow has to learn what that really means. Luke Skywalker has to learn what it really means to be a great warrior. That's what he wants to go to do. He has to relearn that. And this movie's heroes winning wars, fighting the bad guys. Let's question how we do it or everything. It's, in many cases, you're going to show that you are on the right path. Just got to make sure it's the right way. So I think, again, I think it's like, Leia, you got us here. You got us here. Rest well. We're going to finish this for you, even though she's still around. But go into Rise of Skywalker with, this is truly our fight.
Yeah. And I think along with that, I'm sure there'd been like Leia posters that said hope on them, long before. But there's just 1-2 punch between Rogue One that you mentioned that, is a lot about hope, and then ends with the character of Leia literally saying hope. And then words of hope literally being ascribed to Leia of that hope is like the sun quote. This movie really makes it utterly concrete that she is the holder of hope, and how much of that has been her journey all through the Skywalker Saga, starting in the beginning for us in the real world chronologically with A New Hope, that it's called Hope, and she is the one who is looking for Obi-Wan as the hope.
Right.
She finds Luke instead as the hope. There's the literal reminder of her as the holder of hope in Last Jedi when R2 replays that exact message. It's explicit in the crawl of Last Jedi that Leia is hoping Luke will restore a spark of hope. And there's a real shift here where the hope literally was in A New Hope was Obi-Wan was Leia hoping to find Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. And then it's Luke is the new hope. And this movie really, really kind of shifts that to Leia is the one who is holding the hope and needs to pass it on to others.
Yeah. It's time to let it go.
Yeah. And Leia does indeed hold on to all that hope. We talked about this a little bit at the top here about, Leia absorbs a lot of trauma, but she does succeed in her goals. Poe learns, Luke returns, the Resistance survives. You feeling after we talked about it like Last Jedi is a triumph for Leia?
I'll say it again. Yeah, I think it might be the capital THE, the victory. One of those chicken or the egg kind of what comes first. I think the victory in Rise of Skywalker is one of the people. It's a complete one. There's stuff we've talked about here on this feed before, but I think truly none of that happens without her and getting them to survive and getting the lessons and telling Rey you have everything you need and telling Poe get your head out of the cockpit and supporting Finn and welcoming him with open arms. Just no, she doesn't care that he ran away. She cares that he's here. You're here in the fight now, and all those kind of things. It is and getting and Luke back and everything that happens there. Yes, I think the survival is the victory, and that leads to the end, the victory in the end.
Yeah. Well said. So let's move on to
Mm.
the end. The rise of Skywalker. Leia's journey concludes. In this film, she hopes to train Rey, pass on leadership to Poe in its complete form, defeat the First Order, and if possible, still save her son, Ben. At the beginning of the film, she is the keeper of Anakin and Luke's blade. And she initially resists Rey leaving to continue Luke's journey and try to defeat the Emperor. But then Leia does give Rey the blade and the crucial information, never be afraid of who you are. We learn that Leia did train as a Jedi and made a lightsaber of her own. We learn that she foresaw the death of her son at the end of her Jedi journey and someone else taking up Leia's blade. Leia uses all of her strength at a pivotal moment to reach out to her son, Ben. She helps save him and foils Palpatine's decades-long plan to corrupt and use her son. Rey takes up Leia's saber and uses the Jedi weapons of both Skywalker twins to defeat Palpatine. When Ben sacrifices himself to save Rey, both he and Leia finally pass into the Force. Then Luke and Leia appear to Rey to give their blessing as she takes on the name and legacy of Skywalker. So even though, sadly, so deeply, tragically sad that Carrie Fisher could not actively portray this, there is so much going on with the character of Leia in this film. It centers Leia's legacy from a lot of things. We've talked about a lot of the different ideas of who Leia is. This a person who carries hope and a politician and a leader. But this film really looks at some different parts of Leia's legacy and lets them shine. To me, it really centers her as a mother and a mentor. Poe and Finn both take leadership roles because that's what they want as they've been taught by their mentor Leia. We learn that both Rey and Kylo are motivated by the fear of failing her Leia. What to you is important in these ideas of Leia as mother and mentor specifically?
I just love the idea that it's previously unexplored, the mother stuff. We don't get to spend a lot of time with it because we're going by episode 7, but it's the weight of it. I love that you tied it into Rey. A little of this, you don't want to disappoint mom. But even Finn kind of almost bragging about him being more connected with Leia. She's the sun. She's the center of this galaxy that they're all around here. And that's important in a franchise that, like with a lot of other things, the death of the mother trope. We talk about that a lot. It's nice to see that here at the end, episode 9, the love of mother is the power here for Ben, even though Han and all that stuff is very important and very vital. But I like that it's part of the story, part of her journey. Is this all encompassing love of mom.
Yeah, I think it is really, obviously we get the tragedy of losing her child to the dark side in The Force Awakens, and how that affects her and Han's relationship, and her desire, her hope, her belief that he still has light in him. Maybe a little bit of confirmation in Last Jedi when he doesn't fire on her. So she has been, present as a mother in those first 2 films. But I think centering it here so much, it goes a long way for how underrepresented mothers are in Star Wars. Not that there shouldn't be even more representation of mothers, but depending on how you look at the saga, right? If you look at it as beginning with, in our real world timeline, is episode 4, A New Hope, or in the actual chronology of the galaxy, that it begins with episode 1. Either way, there's like great relevance to the beginning. If you look at it as episode 4, it's a saga that really strongly begins based on Luke, a son's journey to become like his father, Anakin. It's explicit, I'm going to become a Jedi like my father. That's his whole journey. If you look at that as the beginning, then this film through Leia is ending with several people wanting to live up to the greatness of their mother. It's Ben, Rey, even, Poe and Finn. Everybody wants to live up to the legend that is this human legend, Leia Organa. But if you look at it as episode 1 is the beginning, there's also this great circle with Shmi that the story kind of begins with the loss of a mother, which causes all of this damage, that, and then, obviously you can get into the father aspect of it with losing the potential father figure of Qui-Gon, but focusing on the Shmi part of it, that this is the beginning of a lot of things that go wrong, is the loss of a mother. And then the story instead ends with all of these people gaining a mother figure, not just Ben, the literal child, but, Rey is the adopted child, and Poe and Finn. And, if not in taking the name, they are certainly, children of the ideas of Leia,
Yeah, no, there's I love that way to look at it. It's a little bit like the loss of mother breaks the galaxy in a way, and then it heals it here in the end 9 movies later. If you watch it, and you know what, someone out there is probably experiencing these movies in that order, and no other way. And so make all your Star Wars poetry jokes you want, but it's that works for me on that level, on that thematic level.
Yeah. I think just conceptually it's super important, but I think it also really works for Leia as a character, not just like a holder of symbols. But it's great that we get to see her personally, not just as a leader, but a human who fears losing her children. Because of the way this needed to be put together, there was only so much room to explore it. But I'm continually impressed by the elegance of the connections that are made between Leia and other characters. I think the importance of Leia in Rise of Skywalker, I think, Rise of Skywalker gets buried under all these other conversations, which are all legitimate and understandable. But it's just such a powerful Leia movie that we get to see this moment where, despite all her strengths, she's still a human who fears losing her children, because she tries to tell Rey not to go. And where is that coming from? If not, I'm your Jedi Master, but I am this mother figure to you. You've always needed family. You've always wanted it. We've always felt a connection. And it's hard. After I lost my son, it's hard to let you go. And Rey counters by saying, it's what you would do, and it creates this direct line to what is, I think, one of the central emotional conflicts of Rise of Skywalker is, who is Rey? She's got this rightful anger that comes from living an extremely difficult life, but her natural instinct seems to lean towards compassion, caring, checking on BB-8's antenna. That's, giving Dio the juice he needs. That's Rey. Giving the Vexus the power it needs. That's Rey. And the it's what you would do draws this direct connection between Rey and Leia, and to Luke saying, Leia didn't judge you. Leia knew that you were connected to Palpatine, but she didn't judge you because she saw your spirit and heart. And it's always made me feel like this connection between them is like Rey, that Leia sees much of herself in Rey. So it's not, to me, just Leia as mother figure in a mythic way. It's real personal about who Leia actually is and how she connects to Rey and why.
Yeah, and it's important for Rey as she rejects the family that is there in front of her, as Grandpa Palps tells her, "I'm all you got." I think that kind of the symbolism of Leia's lightsaber, but now the actual practicality of what she's learned from Leia, because the simple power of Leia sees her for who she is. That, as Luke tells her, Force Ghost Luke tells her, it's some great stuff, and a great tying that all together too.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned Finn saying, that conversation with Poe, and that kind of a little bit of fight about Leia knows what's going on, and I know what's going on. And I guess you don't, Poe.
Yeah.
But I think it is really important in that there's a lot of connections to be drawn between Finn and Leia. Just even structurally, they have a similar kind of journey in Return of the Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where Leia is just awakening to her Force abilities, and just as Finn is just awakening to his in Rise of Skywalker. But I'm always really affected by the way Finn's Force abilities are portrayed in Rise of Skywalker. They're very intuitive, and they're very much based on connection and relationships, and they are therefore very similar to the way that we've seen Leia use the Force in the original trilogy, with connecting to Luke, sensing him, and even with The Force Awakens, that Leia's Force powers have always been lean towards the intuitive, and it's so cool to see that in Finn as well.
Look at the end of Return of the Jedi, right? Stuff with Han. She doesn't turn to Han and go, "Well, I have force powers now. I can sense that Luke's alive." She just knows. She just says it. She doesn't explain it. It's just left for you to kind of digest and take and build from there. And I think there's some similarities with Finn to me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And other thing I wanted to follow up on is I love what you said about there is such a different energy with there's a lot of conflict between fathers and sons throughout Star Wars. And I love that the conflict here in what is ultimately the thing that makes it so Kylo really can't listen to himself, that is the light side, is that, I failed her. I can't go back to her. And I know, Rey, when you've let in a lot of anger and you failed her and you can't go back to her too. It's all great, but it does really have this very real world, she's not mad, she's disappointed energy of like, it's not that I'm not strong enough or not this enough or whatever. It's just, I let her down. She's so great. And I let her down. I can never go back to her. It's really different and really great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The family connection for Ben is pretty strong. I keep even going back to the Last Jedi scene of, Luke's, she says, "My son's really God." And Luke's like, "I'm not here to save him." But he puts Han's, or the image, or whatever you want to say, he puts Han's dice in her hands. Like, almost as if to say, you know who can save him? Him and you. Really. It ain't me. It's not what I'm here for. And that's tough for Kylo to, I get it. That's why it's so powerful, because you don't want to disappoint Mom. Come on.
Yeah. So let's get into that. This is Leia's big specific action in this film. She reaches out to Ben in this pivotal moment that she foresaw long ago. It has a couple of effects. Obviously, he's about to bring his blade, it looks like, down on Rey. Obviously, that would lose the galaxy. The galaxy would lose Rey's light. Ben would probably have a hard time ever coming back from that choice. There's certainly some dyad implications, so it's a real concrete thing. As Palpatine himself says, reaching out to Ben in this moment foils this long plan that Palpatine's had to whisper in Ben Solo's ear and corrupt the last Skywalker. So there's definitely plot ways that you can say, yes, this is the actual impact of that moment. But for you, is this a meaningful final moment for Leia's journey on the mortal plane?
Yeah, if anything, just it's worth it so you can hear Palpatine say, "The Princess of Alderaan." Love all that. Yeah. It's like when Luke passed, it's like I asked myself as a fan, what did I really want? If that wasn't what I wanted, did I want him to flame out in an X-wing or be sliced in two by Kylo's blade? No, I don't know. That's why it made me accept a little bit more of the peace and purpose journey too. So there's something there with Leia that it's such a personal final act, and it has ramifications for the galaxy and for the big fight and Palpatine. It's also going back to where we first met Leia for most of us with Episode 4 in that real world timeline. And that moment we talked about, I'm not just saying it's built out of the putting the blanket on Luke scene, but what do we know about Leia? Her willing to sacrifice herself in a way for the greater good and the greater purpose. And this is it for me. And it's a very motherly purpose. It's a very sad and bittersweet purpose in a way, but it's heart-wrenching, and it's beautiful, and it's inspiring. And go into what you're talking about of just, not disappointing Mom, or it's only, that Kylo's big fear was just felt he wanted to go back but couldn't, and to feel that love for Leia to truly give herself up in that moment for Ben is something that worked for me, and it's powerful for me.
I love the way you're describing that, and even connecting it to that moment of putting the blanket, the shawl on Luke is such a moment of kindness and empathy. We discuss it as but shouldn't Leia's grief be centered too? But regardless of anything, it is a moment of great kindness of seeing what he needs and giving it to him. And that is, I think, great to draw a line of that kindness, that empathy from Luke to this moment with Ben. I think this moment is just so huge to me for lots of reasons. It's just great to see her take a big concrete action. As we've kind of examined, as we've gone through these movies, Leia does a lot. She endures a lot of loss. Return of the Jedi, I love that you described her as an action hero. She does just get to jump in there and do a lot. But she's not always centered, and she doesn't always take a huge, big concrete action herself.
Mhm.
And it's great that her final action is, not just nodding to somebody else that they've learned her lesson, but it's her taking an action. And in some ways, it's this great resolution of the different elements of her character that at different points we've seen Leia jump in and take care of the action herself, grab the blaster from Han and Luke and help their bumbling rescue, all those great moments. But we've also seen her a ton as the leader who knows what must be done and sends her agents to do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this is so literally something she can't send anyone else to do. She can't send Han. She can't send Luke. She can't send Rey. She can't send Poe. She can't send anyone else to do this. This is literally her basically projecting her soul to be with Ben. That's the way I interpret it. It's the ultimate. I can't stay behind at the base. I have to go out there and embrace the action. And to me, I always just feel that moment. Like if a hug can be metaphysical, right? Like if a hug could be down to your soul, and it's one of those moments that strips away all of the space fantasy, all of the weirdness, and it's a son who disappointed his mother, and the one thing that he thought he lost forever is being held by her, and now he feels that in his soul. It's just really moving to me that is her last action.
And the effect on Rey in that moment, perhaps feeling that her power has hurt another person again. There's a lot going on. And again, in a real world way, I mean, the fact that we're able to pull this off with the untimely passing of Carrie, and even just the limitations of the technology and what they had in the footage, I still really applaud it. Can you consider it all pitch perfect? Maybe not. And also knowing what it takes to get movies made or TV shows made, and meetings and producers and studio heads and test audiences. Gosh, it's a miracle any movie gets made. It really is. This movie with all on it to pull some of this stuff out, I still really applaud it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, there's definitely, you can look at it and say like, oh, it's too bad that, Carrie Fisher was not alive to shoot these scenes new, and that one feels a little like Mad Libs and all that stuff, but it strips away from me when you look at like the meaning and let yourself feel the emotion and connect it back to that you, me line. And this moment from Leia opens Ben up to even the possibility of coming back to the light. She just gives him this hope that he had lost, and he lost hope that he could ever go back to her, and she gives him hope, and then Rey is there to show him empathy by saving him, and then the you me really plays off of the reason he's thinking about his dad is because Leia opened up that possibility, and ultimately it's a great moment between Ben and Han, and I always go on about the cheek touch that saved the galaxy, and I love that connection. But the actual lines there, too, are about Leia, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, where he says, I can't go back. She's gone. The one thing that I would have gone back for is gone. And it's like, your mother may be gone, but, what she stood for, what she fought for. I mean, talk about Leia as somebody who is, destined to have a legacy. It's just literally saying, this woman made the choice to stand for things, and you can always honor that, is really, the payoff of you, me, we can save our son together.
Yep. Watch that episode 7 scene again.
All right, we'll move on to this big idea of Leia's legacy as a Jedi and a Skywalker twin is also really elevated in this film. We got to see her use the Force in Last Jedi, but we didn't really talk about it. Or we got Lor San Tekka to call her royalty, and I can interpret that a certain way as being the Queen of the Light. But Rise of Skywalker gets explicit. She is elevated to be hand in hand with Luke as a Jedi and a Skywalker twin. How do you feel about that? Do you think it works? Do you think it was needed? Does it tie her journey together? What are your thoughts?
I think it absolutely ties together. I think I forget exactly how you phrased it. Maybe you remember, but just of just essentially answering the question first posed in 1980. Who is the other one? Who's the other hope? Who's the other choice? And then we get an answer in Jedi. And here we are 30 some years later, whatever it is, we get this movie. And again, I got to be honest, I never expected to see any version of Leia walking around with a lightsaber on her hilt or her belt, lightsaber hilt on her belt, I should say. I didn't. Maybe others did, and maybe that would have been cool in its own way. I just identified so much as the way George kind of presented her originally. Like, yeah, these scoundrels and kids are out here chasing things. This rebellion is hers. So that said, come to Rise of Skywalker, and you get the reveal of the lightsaber, and again, I believe you broke it down pretty simply of just like back in our review and discussion of this film is like Rey needs both lightsabers to fight and defeat Palpatine in that moment, and it pays homage to 1980 of No, There Is Another, and it fulfills all that, and then you get some of the details revealed. Some people didn't like them, some people did like them. Of we'd already gotten it in some of the novels and stuff like that. I was Luke's first student, but I felt my place was helping the galaxy, which is a truth. And the other side of that is also I saw some stuff that made me think that I need to get off this path and someone else will pick up the blade. And to see that all come together, I think it ties a lot of things together for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love that. I do love that we actually did, CGI and all, however you feel about it. We got to see sort of the Leia of that great space fantasy of like, she picked up a blade, she's got it. That's how she designed her hilt. Now she's swinging it, and of course she's good at it because she's intuitive and she studies hard. The two things you need to be a Jedi, and she's got them in spades. Of course, she was just a great, easy first student who picked it all up. And then, playing off her line in New Hope about Han, no one can choose his path for him. She felt this is her path, but both concerned about her son, this vision, but also like, but I'm a politician at heart. It's what I was raised for. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm needed. So that's what I'm going to do. So that all that stuff of knowing that backstory concretely of like, she studied, she trained, she's got a lightsaber, she made a different choice. That all worked for me. But yeah, exactly. Some of the stuff that I was excited about on our very first review, our very first discussion of Rise of Skywalker, that, it does pay off the, no, there is, that boy was our last hope. No, there is another, meaning another hope. And it even pays off just the way that the Skywalker twins are discussed, the way Log Sitting Ghost Obi-Wan says, the Emperor knew as I did that if Anakin were to have any offspring, they would be a threat. This idea that both of the Skywalker twins were a threat to the Emperor is paid off by symbolically both of their blades being needed to stop him, to hold back his anger and his greed and his destruction. They needed both Skywalker twins symbolically, is extremely meaningful for paying off Leia being the absolute equal in galactic and cosmic importance to Luke, not just as a leader, but as a Jedi.
Yeah, again, going back to old Log Obi-Wan, that's a great. It's just, Palpatine's been living with that fear of these two twins, or would have been living it with them for a long time, and they are a threat. So here they are. It pays off in a great way, and not for nothing, Joseph. I think it's a real cool lightsaber too.
It is a super great lightsaber, and I'm looking forward to having many more, not just pictures, but I want some actual action figures in hand with that lightsaber.
Yeah.
The other thing for me is, we've really been looking at how her legacy is built, then all these other characters kind of inheriting her legacy in the sequel trilogy. And you've got everything Princess, General, and Force Awakens kind of wrestling with, what all titles to give her because she deserves so many. I love that Jedi is just as important ultimately. And I think the biggest thing for me, really, playing off of that Empire Strikes Back quote of "No, there is another hope," when I look at the film title, A New Hope, and that is a story about Leia trying to get her request to Obi-Wan Kenobi because he's the hope. She doesn't get him, but she gets Luke because he's the hope. And retroactively, it makes me feel like, no, A New Hope means both of them to me. Like,
Yeah.
you think, literally, structurally, analytically, it's referring to Luke. It's singular, but in my heart, it's both of them. It's the Skywalker twins have found their way back to each other, and together they are the New Hope.
Yeah, no, especially again with all the stories complete, you can go back and if all these stories do their job, I think you can pull that stuff and connect those things. That's what we talk about emotional canon all the time, and I absolutely believe that. That's these great. It's okay to ask these great what ifs. You and I have had fun even this week. Like what if Obi-Wan and Leia did go on a little adventure? Fun stuff. But the story is what it is, and there's great meaning in that.
Yeah. So a couple other things I want to talk about as we head toward wrapping up, because there's so much we could talk about. We've really been looking at which films in the Skywalker saga where Leia has an arc, meaning she starts in a place of stasis, an event happens, and she is changed by it. It's small, but I really do think Leia does have an arc in this movie. At the beginning, she's not ready to let go of Rey, Ben, the Resistance, and by the end, she has passed on everything she knows and enters the Force. Do you think this arc is there? And if so, do you think it's a fitting end for the character of Leia Organa Solo Skywalker?
I absolutely do. I'll bring a little bit of the novelization by Ray Carson, which I think is really good. You got Luke kind of whispering her, Ghost Luke or Cosmic Force Luke, whatever you want to say, whispering in her ear, just like let go. And she has to wait for the right time. She has to wait for the right moment. She is this kind of just big source of, like you said, wisdom and all the things you just listed: wisdom, leadership, skill, hope, motherhood, redemption, warmth, comfort, steadfast, the drive forward, the will to rebel. She's all these things through these movies. And what you just said, for her to know that it was time, really time. She's addressed it before in comics and stuff. She understands it. She's intelligent. She knows her time is finite. But to face it and to know that you have done your duty, you have passed on everything, and this is your final act. It is time to let go and have that trust. And in the end, to have hope that everything you've done will have meaning and has this legacy. I think it's a fitting end. I could not think of any other way to end this existence of the character.
Yeah. I think I'm really glad that you brought up the novelization. I really agree with it. I think it's emphasized so well in the novelization. I do feel like it's there in the film. To me, it's why that moment where she doesn't want to let Rey go on the journey is so important, because it shows somebody who's like, I know I send people out on missions, but like, I got to be here. I got to stay here. I got to be the leader. I got to take care of everyone. I got to make sure I've passed on everything. Just that little bit of resistance to, the children all going out on their own without her, I think sets up this arc where she needs to truly let go, because she's been the fighter who's in the leader who's needed control. She's been behind the strategy boards, moving her agents around like chess pieces. And what a great final challenge for her to totally let go, literally, I think, like leave her body to do what she needs to do, and trust that she has successfully passed on what she has learned. And I think it gets fulfilled so great by having everything with Rey, obviously, but also with Poe, right? Of being of kneeling and saying, can I do it? Can I be what you were? And Poe does pick up that very specific baton of Leia of keeping the spark of hope alive, and so Leia's arc, her challenge to let go, is really validated by, she has passed on what she's learned successfully. And I think having that image of her at the end with Luke in the white robes, bearing the sabers, right to the last minute of Luke and Leia. They were the new hopes. They were the Skywalker twins. They were the legacy, and they've passed it on.
Mm-hmm. Skywalker Saga, I've heard these are called.
Yep. That's a term I've heard thrown around a little bit.
It's on a sticker or something. Yeah, I got you.
It's on a sticker. Yeah. I heard about a rumor on the playground about it being called the Skywalker Saga. So for you personally, what's her legacy? Like, we've had a ton of fun, talking about her actual journey through the movies, who she is as a character, what she represents. You've made some great connections to your own personal life and journey. But when you try to be like Leia, what kind of just day-to-day life moments are those? What do you do when you're trying to be like Leia?
I consider Leia the path. And what I mean by that is I'm a Han guy, meaning literally I'm a grumpy guy in a jacket and would much rather just kind of run away and go be something that I think I am. And sometimes I'm Luke, like, well, that sucked. We're not going to do that again. All right. I pack up my bags and I go home a lot. Leia's the path, capital T, capital P. She's the path. Similar to Padme, you talk about Padme being the moral compass of so much of the prequel era and the Clone Wars and everything. Leia is the one you aspire to. And so while Leia the character, Leia the character influenced a lot of my youth, and we even talked about just frankly just the who I might look for in a partner and all those kind of like early kind of real world things. All that's there. I was asked not too long ago on another show, Jason Inman and Ashley Robinson did one of their shows, and they, name your number one star, like who is the best example of a Star Wars character? And the answer to me is Leia. Leia, because she's there for the fight, all these steadfast things and the hope and everything. So when I'm out in the real world and I want to be like Leia, that just means to me her legacy is to find your way to the right path, doing what's right, doing it with compassion and empathy, but also strength, and also knowing who you are, and maybe even at times knowing when to let go. She is the center of Star Wars to me in a lot of ways, and represents that path. And I'm not going to say the correct path and the right path. We all must follow our own journeys and make our own choices. Leia would say that too. Yeah. But the center of the story, Leia's there through all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredibly well said. I think, you said something very similar to, I think, what my initial, gut reaction is this idea that you can be extremely strong and extremely caring at the same time. My friends Double Clicks have a great song called Sensitive Badass, meaning you can be both. And Leia's the ultimate sensitive badass in a certain way. And I think for me, I appreciate the complexity of who she is when I can be kind of inspired in almost a joking way of like, I know I just need to, I know I want to do some writing to accomplish the things I want to write, do in life. But I don't feel like it, or it's the scene I need to write is scary. Leia's just such a great figure to be like, come on, be strong, keep going, keep moving forward. Faced with kind of endless opportunities, I think, to try to be empathetic when you can, and try to take care of yourself and give yourself what you need, but also just kind of being there for other people. And I've been really trying to remember particularly in our weird pandemic times of like everyone I'm interacting with is probably doing the same or worse than me.
Yeah.
That's like, I think that's a real Leia being like, yeah, I'm going through hell, but I'm also going to be here for you too, because I have that strength and I can make that choice. So I think sometimes when I need to kind of kick my own ass and not disappoint myself is a great Leia inspiration. And I think when I'm trying to remind myself to be empathetic to others, Leia is a great inspiration for that as well. And the pass on what you have learned is strong, to not hoard knowledge, but to want to share it, to want to let other people know what you have learned. That one gets tied to Luke a lot, but I think it's super because of the explicit dialogue. But I think it's so explicit in Leia's journey in the sequel trilogy that's her whole goal. That's her whole thing, is to pass on what you have learned. But the last bit of Leia legacy that I wanted to shout out is, it's a newer line because it's from Rise of Skywalker, but this line and this idea of never be afraid of who you are. Like, what a great line for a complex character. You got a complex character like Leia, and she's got one thing to say to Rey, this one bit of wisdom to impart on this journey, and it certainly applies literally to Rey, who is confused about who she is and is going to face this challenge of this, allegedly horrible legacy, and that ties back to Leia's legacy with Vader and with what Ben had to wrestle with. It could even tie back to the reality that Carrie Fisher had a ton of challenges that she had to face. But I mean, never be afraid of who you are. It's such to me, a Carrie Fisher line of accept everything about yourself, accept your strengths, accept your flaws, have a sense of humor, try to be strong, and, just keep moving. Don't be afraid of who you are, accept your entire self. Is a great Leia message.
It's absolutely a great message. Absolutely. And it's so powerful to Rey. Both to me, I take it as don't be afraid of who you are, meaning what you could be, your potential, and what you might want to be, but also don't be afraid of, your Palpatine's granddaughter. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. And you feel you have this power that will hurt people. Don't worry about that. You can find out. And that speaks to me of even against Carrie and the demons in her life that she tried to own, or at least tried to own up to, and enlighten and comfort other people with them, and undeniably her to the bitter end. And I think that's a great lesson for Leia to impart for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a great conversation, Ken. This episode went a little bit longer, but there's so much. The sequel trilogy is really, really rich with ideas of Leia and Leia as a human and Leia's actual actions and relationships. Just so many different facets of the character that's represented in these movies. So we could talk for a very long time. But I want to ask one final question, and this will go under the category of never be afraid of who you are. I am someone who is obsessed with action figures. So I want to close out by asking about action figures. Ken, the original trilogy has so many Leia action figures. What is the Leia action figure that they have not made yet that you want the most?
There's some really good potential choices. Some that I'd say, come on, we need. But I try to go to what we grew up with, which is the different type of Leia figures representing a different, maybe part of her journey, personality, or just what she brought to the movie. Hoth Leia, Bespin Escape Leia, New Hope Leia, all those kind of things. Combat Poncho Leia, right? Like their favorite characters. So I think we need injured head wrap Leia. The ability to survive, the ability to still be yourself in the face of adversity, and the ability to still look good when your head's wrapped in a bandage and you're still going to take action. I want injured head wrap.
That is definitely in the let's get real completist about this. What small image have we not made yet? We don't have one specifically lined down with the head wrap. That's great. If I had to just pick one, I think we have the good 3 3/4 Last Jedi gown, which is great. Comes with a blaster and everything. It's sensitive, badass. Leadership Leia, love that action figure. I really want Rise of Skywalker. I really want the what I'm calling the Agent Class leadership gown. I love it's such a different look, and it is to me so important that it still looks like Leia, still looks elegant, but that darker color of the sort of jacket part with the higher collar, it so says, yep, I have been through a lot. Maybe I'm even still in mourning. Maybe I'm even starting to dress like my father, Anakin Skywalker, and representing everything that he was. I'm being the Jedi Master. I'm holding the family blade until I can, part with it and give it to Rey. There's so much going on in that costume. I really want an action figure of that.
I absolutely want that. Yeah, is it just leadership Leia? Should we just call it that?
Leadership Leia, yeah. Letting go Leia. I don't know. If I could just have one, that's the one I'd vote for. But the other thing I would like, Ken, is how they used to make the over time the various evolution packs where you'd get like 3 or 4 figures.
Oh yeah.
An evolution of Leia pack with the Jedi training Leia, which is absolutely needed. Then you could get this the leadership Leia from Agent Class, and then finally, I would not mind a Force Spirit Leia in those robes action figure. That would be nice.
I love that. I love that. Oh man, we need some more figures.
Need more
We
action
need more
figures.
figures.
Always.
That's great.
Always. Any final thoughts then?
Nah, just happy to discuss Leia on from our perspective again, and our view is always what we say. But Leia is so important to me and important to so many, and just love diving in. And yeah, it's fitting the sequel trilogy era. I think it is more rewarding than maybe initially thought for some, and I hope you all take an opportunity to dive into all the characters, but particularly what's there with Leia.
Yeah, and as Ken just said, we always do want to keep in mind that these are our opinions. We'll try to offer our evidence from movies, specific moments, specific lines, but they're always our interpretations, our opinions, and we know, especially with a character like Leia, that means so much to so many different people. And so tied to Carrie Fisher and her journey, we totally recognize and respect that there are many, many different opinions out there, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to ours. And we do realize that these are simply our perspectives, but there are many to be had on Leia. My final thought is I love this quote from Visual Dictionary. It is a picture of Leia, and there is a little line to like just under her clavicle where there would normally be like an insignia.
Mhm.
And the little bit of information is she wears no insignia. Everyone is aware of Leia's rank. And what a great thing to say about Leia. We are all aware of her rank. It is quite high. So with that, Ken, do you want to let people know where they can find us?
I absolutely do. We are on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We are on Instagram, YouTube as well. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. Podcast available a lot of different spots, including Anchor, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and more. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. You can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Always love having new patrons join the team and getting into our Discord server. You can follow me at CatNapsuck or go to catnapsuck.com for more information on all the things I do.
Excellent. And for myself, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joseph Scrimshaw. You can check out all of my other comedy adventures on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for the hope that is Leia Organa Solo Skywalker, this has been Force Center.